a power move. Battle for the lead now. Tightens up in turn 3.
He'll dive to the bottom. He's going for the lead. Hard, strong, power move to the bottom of the racetrack.
Now, this week's edition of Pistol Pete's Power Rankings.
The West Coast swing is in the rearview mirror, and after Sunday's race at Phoenix Raceway, here are the 10 drivers that make up this week's edition of the Power Rankings. One driver from last week has dropped out. That driver's name is Brad Keselowski. So we have one new face inside the top 10, and let's start in the number 10 position with the driver who was number 8 a week ago. That is Denny Hamlin, who qualified on the outside of the front row. But that was really the high water mark for Hamlin in Phoenix. He fell back. Some strategy didn't work out, and that controversial last lap incident with Ross Chastain wound up handing Joe Gibbs Racing driver Denny Hamlin with a 23rd place finish. He is 7th in the point standings. And Mike, even without that incident at the end with Chastain, it was somewhat surprising that Denny and Chris Gabehart weren't quite as good as I thought they might have been going into Phoenix on Sunday.
The successes of Toyota Sunday were few and far between. I was looking for Denny to be in the mix more than what he got, but at the very end, I mean, listen, I will applaud Chris Gabehart for rolling the dice and going 2 tires because you just don't know if it's going to work or not. It worked Sunday up front, but Denny was mired in the back, and of course he got tangled up with Ross. It's hard to believe that Denny Hamlin in 4 races only has one top 10 finish this year, and that was 6th at Fontana. Everything else has not ended and fared well for that number 11 team.
It has been a frustrating start for that team after 4 races, I agree. So Denny Hamlin, number 10 this week in the power rankings. Let's go to number 9, and it is the new face inside the top 10, and it is a driver at Joe Gibbs Racing, and it is Christopher Bell, who comes in at number 9, and he really continues to be the lead car at JGR, and that's kind of a carryover from how Bell ended last season. He was inside the top 10 most of the afternoon in Phoenix, and he took the checkered flag in 6th place. He happens to be in 6th place in the point standings, but C. Bell has been really good. One week he had issues of the first 4 here, but for the most part of the season, the 20 team has carried the load there for JGR, and he did it again on Sunday, Mike.
Now, this is the one that I was curious about because I was head-scratching on this. And I know it's tight inside of your power rankings and inside the top 10. C. Bell has 3 top 6 finishes in 4 races. The only one that he doesn't have one in, and that's at Fontana restart that he got tangled up in and kind of killed the day when he was in that Sirius XM Toyota Camry. But that was the one that's like, wow, I thought C-Bell would have been a little higher instead of basically trying to hang on to a spot inside the top 10.
Yeah, I agree. But still, he's back in the power rankings now, and he's number 9, and we'll see what he does this weekend at Atlanta and if he moves up next week. So, number 9, C-Bell. Let's go to number 8, and this is the guy that has dropped the most this week. He was 2nd last week, and it is Ross Chastain. And I would say a bit of an odd day for Chastain. He had some speed early in the weekend, good qualifying effort, and to a degree early in the race, but didn't really have much after that. And again, bottom line is he was back there dicing up with Denny Hamlin, and when the checkered flag flew, there was Ross Chastain with a 24th place finish. Now, he's still 3rd in the point standings, but an off day for Chastain, which had an exclamation point with the controversial last lap with Denny Hamlin.
You know, you could even go out and say the last 2 weeks have been un-Chastain-like or un-Trackhouse-like. 12th and 24th in his last 2 races. And we talked about this on Monday in our Checker Flags and Black Flags show. Trackhouse was a little flat. I was expecting more. Ross led a lap. That was it. But they finished 20-plus, both of them. I was looking more for Ross, and then, of course, as you mentioned, he got tangled up there with Denny coming to the checkered flag.
Put a pin in that because we'll get back to that conversation with another guy inside the power rankings, but we'll stop here with Ross Chastain at number 8. We'll go to number 7, and another guy who has gone down a couple of spots this week. He was 5th last week, and it's Joey Logano, who really, had the Phoenix in his hand, obviously, in November when he won the race, but going back here, and he told us about this on Behind the Wheel yesterday, they were just so off in that first stage on Sunday. When you think about it, they were so off they fell down a lap. The fact that he was able to rebound and salvage an 11th place finish, kind of remarkable. So the 2 points I would say, one, hard to believe that just a few months after winning the race in the championship at Phoenix in November, he was so off, 4 months later. But at the end of it, an 11th place finish, Logano. He is 12th in the point standings, and I think that's kind of what we've been seeing so far this year out of the 22 team, Mike.
You mentioned that he went down a lap at the end of stage one. That for me was a wow moment. I wasn't expecting Joey to not be on the lead lap before we got to that portion of the race. I don't know what Paul did and what Joey did. They were able to salvage it, but is it me or is just the 22 team just a tick off compared to where they left off, obviously, last fall when they were in their playoff stride?
For sure. They feel flat to me. I mean, and what it did when he fell a lap down for me was get to NASCAR Fantasy Live and swap out that garage pick because I took Logano out, and I did. So, but Joey wound up, as I said, 11th. He is 7th in the point standings. Let's go to number 6, and let's pick up the conversation we had about Trackhouse Racing. This is their other driver, Daniel Suarez. Same spot as last week. He did not have the best outing, actually. Started from the 11th spot. Here's what really kind of confused me about Suarez. He said going into the weekend, he felt like his car was faster than it was a year ago. Well, that certainly didn't show on the racetrack. So a flat outing for Daniel Suarez as well, who's 11th now in the Cup Series standing. So Trackhouse with Ian Chastain, to your earlier discussion, Baggy, just not the best for 2023 at Phoenix.
Compared to like where they left off last year, it just feels like, well, they were MIA at Phoenix. And you talk about Daniel in his 22nd place finish. Ross was 24th, and hopefully they can regroup at Atlanta, but just things just aren't just right over there at Trackhouse after this past weekend in Phoenix.
So Daniel Suarez stays in the number 6 spot, which brings us to the top 5.
Number 5.
The guy who is 5th goes up 2 spots. He was 7th last week, and the solid beginning for 2023 rolls on for Alex Bowman, who didn't really have a standout day in Phoenix, but he was still good enough to post a top 10 finish. And with it, Alex Bowman is on top of the NASCAR Cup Series point standings heading into Atlanta this weekend. I know, obviously, we talked a lot about Hendrick Motorsports, and we'll talk about a couple of guys here yet in the power rankings, but Alex Bowman back to form in the 48 car so far this year, Mike.
You talked about Alex's successes. Well, coming into the race, it was Daniel Suarez and Alex Bowman that started the season with 3 top 10 finishes. Well, with Daniel finishing 22nd, Alex Bowman now is the only driver in the Cup Series to have 4 top 10 finishes in the first 4 races. Again, Petey, under the radar, not getting a lot of conversation. Even though we're trying to generate conversation, fans aren't just taking it. They're just, again, largely overlooked, and it's hard to believe. Leading the point standings coming out of the West Coast swing, I did not have that on my preseason prediction list.
No, or obviously early on in 4 weeks, Alex Bowman and his new crew chief, Blake Harris, everything seems to be clicking there for the 48 team. So number 5 is Alex Bowman.
Number 4.
Well, we just saw one car get into the fence, and that was Kyle Busch that tagged the wall here, so we'll keep an eye on Kyle.
Hi, that's Jeff Striegel from the MRN broadcast you hear Sunday here on SiriusXM NASCAR Radio, talking about the guy who was number 3 last week in the power rankings, so we're going to move him down to number 4 this week, and it is Kyle Busch. A decent day, nothing spectacular for the number 8 team. Some challenges on pit road there along the way, and Busch did all he could do to get a top 10 performance on the board. An 8th place finish for Kyle Busch, 9th in the point standing, so not terrible, but not outstanding for Kyle Busch in the 8 team Sunday, Bagman.
A very quiet Sunday. Didn't get a lot of conversation in the telecast or the broadcast compared to some others. I would say that is the quietest day so far for Kyle Busch. Would you not agree with that? Even though he finished in the top 10, just didn't do anything flashy or didn't flex enough muscle to get a lot of the conversation over the course of the race.
But that was the point I would make. Yeah, I agree with you. Quiet, but still, if you have a quiet day like that where you're really not a factor and you get a top 10 finish, it's not the worst day for Kyle Busch. So we'll put him number 4 in the power rankings.
Number 3.
Boy, Harvick dials up the low lane. They're side by side for the lead. Kevin Harvick going after the lead here in Phoenix.
Harvick keeps it on the high side, does not use the dog leg. Into turn 1 they come, side by side and wheel to wheel. Harvick uses a little bit of the apron. He's got a hood out in front, a door panel in front. Kevin Harvick is your new leader at Phoenix.
Yeah, there's Dan Hubbard with the call, talking about the guy who goes all the way from number 10 last week to number 3 this week. Kevin Harvick, Stewart-Haas Racing driver, had his eyes set on a 10th Phoenix win in the late going before a caution came out, really changed the complexion of the race. They made a 4-tire stop, didn't quite pan out for Harvick and company, settled for a 5th place finish, but Kevin Harvick with a really good run, Mike, and he is now 2nd in the NASCAR Cup Series point standings after 4 races.
Here we go. They're on the right path. Rodney Childers, Kevin Harvick, that number 4 car. There are only 2 drivers to have 3 top 10 finishes in the West Coast Swing. Alex Bowman's one. Kevin Harvick is the other. Here we go. Buckle up, kids. I'm thinking that we're going to have to, that the field is going to have to deal with a lot of Kevin Harvick here this year if the early season successes continue the way they're going right now.
Well, the early season this year is completely different than it was last year for sure. And I know Kevin Harvick got better in the second half when he won back-to-back at Michigan and Richmond, but they were off to a much better start here in 2023. So Kevin Harvick, number 3 in the power rankings.
Number 2.
His first stage win of 2023, his 43rd in his career. Kyle Larson across the line. Green and white checkered flag is out on lap 185. Kyle Larson scoring the stage 2 win.
All right, there is Jeff Striegel again talking about the guy who was 4th last week in the power rankings. He is 2nd this week, and it is Kyle Larson. And quite frankly, he appeared to be the class of the field, winning the pole, leading practice. He led 201 laps on Sunday in Phoenix, but for a second straight week, it was just not to be for Larson. He came home 4th after the late race restart. He is 5th in the point standing, so I would say leading in disappointment would probably be Kyle Larson, certainly, but still a nice start to the season in terms of finishes. 2nd in the power rankings this week, Mike.
Kevin Harvick was disappointed, obviously, with the late race shenanigans and how they turned out. I would say that Kyle Larson thought for a moment, like, okay, this is going to be Vegas, but with the tables turned, because he got off pit road first. Then he had that second caution flag to send him into double overtime. And then old Willie B just jammed it in there on the outside and did not lift. I would say that, yes, they're frustrated and disappointed, but it must feel good to be disappointed with the finish that they got Sunday at Phoenix. Again, I'm going to talk about this a little more in detail, but you have a group of guys that are slowly starting to separate themselves from the rest of the field. Kyle Larson is on that list of mine.
Well, Kyle Larson's on that list as well. Kyle Larson's in a Chevrolet, and Chevrolet has run the table so far this year. So he comes home number 2, and of course then that brings us to the top of the mountain.
Number 1.
Off turn 2 for the final time. It's William Byron by 2 car lengths over Ryan Blaney, Kyle Larson, Tyler Reddick, and Kevin Harvick.
Here they come up off turn 4. Checkered flag is in the air, and William Byron is going to win the United Rentals Work United 500 at Phoenix.
That is Alex Hayden, the MRN race-winning call you heard Sunday here on SiriusXM NASCAR Radio. The man, number 1 last week, is number 1 this week as well. William Byron, back-to-back wins for him. He followed up his Las Vegas victory with another trip to Victory Lane Sunday in Phoenix. He led 2 times for 64 laps, but that late race caution and an excellent pit stop by his crew, that all added up to career win number 6 for the Hendrick Motorsports driver. So he is 4th in the point standings, number 1 in the power rankings. As we head to Atlanta this week, it is Willie B on top of the power rankings.
And you can catch these power rankings on the SiriusXM Sports blog. For Willie B, no question, number 1 team in the Cup Garage right now. And I made this comment the other day, Petey, and I'll say it again. I'm getting Jeff Gordon-like feels with the performance of that 24 car. It's up front, it's consistent, and here's the thing, though. They're executing and winning races. My question is, how long can they sustain it? I'm not saying that they're going to go out and win the next 10, but if they don't win, will they still have a top 5 day? Will they stay in range? Willie B having some challenges, obviously, to start off the season at Daytona, and, well, of course, who didn't have a challenge at Daytona for the most part. But I would say that with what they've been able to accomplish at Las Vegas, what they've been able to accomplish at Phoenix, they clearly are a stride ahead of the rest of the garage right now.
Well, there's no doubt, and let's not forget, they are the defending winners of the race on Sunday at Atlanta Motor Speedway. So I know you just don't cut and paste what you did a year ago, but they have an excellent shot to maybe win 3 races in a row. Is that possible? We'll see if William Byron and company can do that on Sunday, Baggy.
We will do a deeper dive into Pistol Pete's power rankings with a TMD 6-pack on the way for you at the top of the hour.